All right, today we are diving deep into a fascinating report about 2025. It was a year that just completely tore up the rulebook, defied every single prediction, and ended up being one of the most record-breaking, just wild financial years anyone can remember. So, let's get into it.
So let me just start with this question. What if everything you thought you knew about how the markets are supposed to work, what's safe, what's risky, was flipped completely upside down in just 12 months? Because, well, that's pretty much exactly what happened in 2025.
Think about it. At the end of 2024, the mood was cautious. Everyone was talking about uncertainty, whispering about a possible recession. But what did we get instead? The absolute opposite. A massive, multi-asset party that didn't just break records, it shattered them. The reality was a world away from the expectation.
But here's the thing. This wasn't just a simple story of everything went up. No, it was way more interesting than that. The report gives it a name, the Great Divergence. It was a year where different markets and different assets just split apart in ways nobody saw coming. And that created some really clear and really surprising winners and losers.
So let's start with what the report calls the revenge of the old world. Seriously. While everybody was watching American tech stocks, something absolutely incredible was happening across the Atlantic. Specifically, in a market that had pretty much been a sleeping giant for decades.
Now, let's be fair. Wall Street had a fantastic year. The S&P 500, the big benchmark for the U.S. market, posted a super impressive 24% gain. In any other year, that would be the top story, no question.
And of course, the tech-focused NASDAQ 100 did even better. It soared over 35% as the whole AI boom really hit its stride. Those are strong numbers, right? Well, hold on to your hats.
Because the real winner, the undisputed global champion of 2025, was Spain's IBEX 35 index. It put up a jaw-dropping 50% return, its best year in over 30 years. It absolutely demolished the U.S. markets. So, how on earth did that happen?
Well, the report says it was powered by three massive engines firing all at once. First, a huge boom in European defense. With all the focus on strategic spending, companies like Indra just exploded, gaining an incredible 185%. Second, the banks were on fire. Higher interest rates meant giants like Santander and BBVA were posting record profits. And third, something the report calls Green Energy 2.0, where renewables became a matter of national security, not just the environment. So the stock markets are having this incredible party, right? But at the very same time, a completely different kind of fever, driven by a totally different logic, was taking over another part of the financial world.
And this brings us to our second great divergence, the sudden fever for real, tangible stuff you can hold in your hand. Now here's where things get really weird. Normally, you just don't see stocks and precious metals have a record year at the same time. They usually go in opposite directions. But, you guessed it, 2025 broke that role too. Gold didn't just nudge up, it rocketed 50%, past $4,500 an ounce. But the real showstopper, the main event, was silver. It doubled. It went up 100%. In a year with a booming stock market, that kind of performance from a safe haven asset is, well, it's just unbelievable.
And the report doesn't pull any punches on this. It flat out says 2025 will be remembered by economic historians as the year of the metals. That's a huge statement. It tells you just how historic this rally was.
So why did silver go parabolic? The report calls it a perfect storm. First, you had a massive industrial deficit. Demand from all these new, super-efficient solar panels was eating up a record amount of the global supply. Second, there was actual physical scarcity. Inventories in the big warehouses were dropping to dangerously low levels. And third, it became the ultimate monetary hedge, a safe place for investors to hide from what they saw coming down the pike for some major world currencies.
And that brings us right to the central puzzle of 2025. How can you have a massive boom in futuristic AI tech stocks and at the exact same time, a historic rush into ancient physical metals? These two things are not supposed to happen together. What was the one single engine powerful enough to drive both of these massive contradictory trends?
Well, the answer lies in the year's main event. It was a showdown that sent ripples through every other market on the planet. A clash of titans between the world's most powerful central banks and what it did to the US dollar. This just lays it out perfectly. On one side of the ring, you had the US Federal Reserve. They started cutting interest rates, trying to engineer a soft landing for the economy.
But in the other corner, you had the European Central Bank. They did the complete opposite. Facing stubborn inflation, they held their rates steady. You had two giants walking in two completely different directions.
And this is the key concept right here: monetary policy divergence. Put simply, think of big global money like water. It always flows downhill, towards higher returns. So when Europe is offering a higher interest rate than the US, huge amounts of capital start flowing out of the dollar and into the euro to chase that better yield. And here's the result. The euro surged against a weakening dollar, climbing all the way to 118. This weak dollar was the secret engine we were looking for. It did two things at once. It made US tech exports cheaper for the rest of the world to buy, and it supercharged the price of anything valued in dollars, like gold and silver. So after a year that basically tore up the old financial map and drew a new one, the report wraps up by giving us a guide for what's next. How in the world do you navigate this new landscape in 2026?
Here are the 3 big strategic takeaways from the report. First, it suggests you should still be overweight in real assets like gold and silver, which tend to do really well when the dollar is weak. Second, it says you need to be an active stock picker geographically, pointing out that Europe still looks a lot more attractive than the US. And third, when it comes to tech, be picky. Focus on the picks and shovels of the AI gold rush, the essential hardware and data storage, not just the flashy software.
So let's just do a final rundown of the champions from this wild year. For global stocks, Spain's IBEX 35 was the king. In US tech, the Nasdaq kept up its powerful run. In commodities, silver was the absolute showstopper, doubling in price. And in currencies, the euro made a massive comeback against the dollar. A truly divergent group of winners.
And this all boils down to the report's final and maybe most important lesson. The old simple strategy of just buying a US index fund and closing your eyes, that's not enough anymore. 2025 proved that a much more tactical, active approach, one that's willing to look for value in places other people are ignoring, is now absolutely essential.
So, 2025 showed us that the financial world is in a new, much less predictable chapter. The old map is broken, which leaves us with the big question. What new great divergence is going to define 2026?